The tale of Monica Morali is a real account of domestic violence that shattered years of silence. She managed to fight back against her abuser and seek justice despite opposition from others. On March 15th, 2015, Monica, 20, returned to Mobile, Alabama after finishing a 2-year assignment in the U.S. Army's 82nd Airborne Division at Fort Bragg, North Carolina at 2:15 p.m. Monica's stepfather, Darnell Harris, a chief mechanic at Wilson's Auto Repair on Government Street, came out of the house to greet her. Surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera later revealed that his seemingly warm welcome was a front that hid years of repeated abuse. Monica's boyfriend, Sergeant Trey Carty, 25, who had driven her from Fort Bragg in his 2012 Ford F-150, watched the interaction with increasing concern. Janet Moore Harris, 47, an administrative assistant at Providence Hospital and regular attendee of Spring Hill Baptist Church, warmly embraced her daughter. However, police reports later showed that Janet initially brushed off the visible tension between Monica and Darnell, calling it typical teenage rebellion, despite Monica being an adult. The family spent the next hour unpacking Monica's belongings, including her military-issued duffel bags and personal items, into her childhood room, the same one where the alleged abuse had occurred. On the evening of March 16th, in room 214 of the Comfort Inn on I-65, where Monica and Trey were staying, Monica opened up about her traumatic childhood experiences. According to her subsequent police statement, case number 2015-3458, the abuse started in 2008 when she was 13. Darnell, who married Janet on September 15th, 2007, would come into Monica's bedroom on the second floor of their home between 11 p.m. and 2 a.m., usually on nights when Janet worked late at the hospital. The abuse continued regularly for 5 years, ending when Monica joined the Army. Medical records from Mobile Infirmary Medical Center, dated March 20th, 2015, documented Monica's ongoing anxiety, PTSD symptoms, and recurring nightmares that began during that period. Dr. Sarah Henderson, her attending psychiatrist, noted that Monica displayed classic signs of long-term trauma, including hypervigilance, sleep disturbances, and severe trust issues. Her enlistment in the Army on June 12, 2013, right after her graduation from Murphy High School, provided an escape from the abuse. While in the Army, Monica had limited contact with her family, calling home only on major holidays and occasionally sending postcards from Fort Bragg. Trey Carty, using his experience as a military police officer with 7 years of service and training in sexual assault cases, suggested that Monica file a formal report with the Mobile Police Department. Monica's hesitation was rooted in several concerns, documented in her therapist's notes: fear of public judgment in Mobile's close-knit community, worries about her mother's religious beliefs regarding family preservation, and Darnell's respected position as a deacon at Spring Hill Baptist Church, where he had served for 8 years. The day ended with Monica receiving a text from Darnell at 9:47 p.m. "Good to have you home, sweetheart. Your mother is so happy." This message, later presented in court, illustrated the psychological manipulation that defined their relationship. Monica's simple response, shown in cell phone records, was a brief "thanks" sent after a 43-minute delay. According to local law enforcement data from 2015, only 37% of sexual abuse cases in Mobile County led to convictions, with cases involving family members having an even lower success rate of 22%. These statistics, combined with the lack of physical evidence after 7 years, contributed to Monica's initial hesitation to pursue legal action. Detective James Martinez from the Mobile Police Department's Special Victims Unit later pointed out that cases like Monica's, where there were delays in reporting and involved family members, were among the most difficult to prosecute. By the end of her first day back in Mobile, Monica had started recording her experiences in a journal, which would later become vital evidence. The first entry, dated March 15th, 2015, read, "I'm back in Mobile. The house hasn't changed. Neither has he, but I have." The journal, a standard Army-issued green notebook, contained detailed accounts of both past abuse and current interactions, written with the precision Monica had learned in the military. The Mobile Police Department's initial assessment report, filed under case number 2015-3458, noted that the Oakley Garden District had seen a 12% increase in reported domestic disturbances over the past year, although none had involved the Harris-Morley household before Monica's return. This statistic would later be cited during community awareness meetings about domestic abuse and sexual assault in seemingly respectable neighborhoods. Monica Morley confronted her mother, Janet Morley Harris, at the Greystone Coffee House on Dolphin Street in downtown Mobile. Security footage from the cafe showed the two women sitting in a corner booth during a conversation that would later become pivotal to the case. According to witness statements from barista Kevin Andrews, the discussion grew more intense, with Janet visibly distressed while Monica remained calm but intense. The confrontation, detailed later in Monica's sworn statement to Detective Sarah Reynolds, case 2015-3458, began when Monica disclosed 7 years of sexual abuse at the hands of her stepfather, Darnell Harris. She provided specific dates and times, describing a pattern of abuse that occurred mostly when Janet worked overnight shifts at Providence Hospital. Janet's initial response, captured in Monica's journal and later in police interviews, was one of vehement denial. "You're lying," Janet reportedly shouted loudly enough for nearby patrons to hear. "Darnell has been nothing but good to this family. He put food on our table when your real father abandoned us." Records show that Janet's first husband, Michael Morley, had left Mobile in 2006, defaulting on child support payments amounting to $27,825. Sergeant Trey Carty, who had waited outside the coffee shop, later documented in a personal statement that Monica appeared visibly shaken and was showing signs of acute anxiety when she left. Medical records from Mobile Infirmary Medical Center indicated that Monica went to the emergency room that night, presenting symptoms of a panic attack. Dr. James Chin prescribed Xanax and recommended immediate psychological counseling. In the days following the confrontation, Darnell Harris launched what investigators would later describe as a systematic defamation campaign against Monica. Church attendance records from Spring Hill Baptist revealed that he attended an emergency deacons meeting where he reportedly expressed concerns about Monica's mental health. 3 church members later provided sworn statements describing Darnell's narrative, which painted Monica as a troubled young woman seeking attention. Church Secretary Linda Peterson recorded specific claims including Monica's supposed disciplinary problems in high school, which were later disproven by school records, her unexpected decision to join the military, which had been discussed with guidance counselors since her junior year, and vague references to emotional instability attributed to her biological father's abandonment. Detective Reynolds' preliminary report noted that this pattern of community manipulation was common in long-term abuse cases, particularly when the abuser held a respected position. The report referenced similar cases in Mobile County, where abusers had used their social standing to discredit victims. Monica met with Jessica Martinez, a victim's advocate at the Mobile Rape Crisis Center, where her intake notes described Monica as clear-headed and determined despite her visible emotional trauma. During the meeting, Monica made the decision to press formal charges, saying, "I won't let him control the narrative anymore." This marked the official start of what would become one of Mobile's most significant abuse cases. Janet Morley Harris was seen sitting in her car outside Wilson's Auto Repair, gripping the steering wheel as she observed the garage's open bay door. Darnell was on the phone, his back to the scene, his voice echoing across the empty parking lot. "That troublemaker doesn't know what she's talking about. I gave her everything." The casual cruelty in his voice made Janet's hand tremble. She recognized the tone. It wasn't the warm, public persona of Deacon Harris, but something much colder. Meanwhile, Monica and Sergeant Carty put their plan into motion. They arranged for a chance meeting with Darnell at Taylor's Pharmacy, where Carty had concealed a recording device. The resulting conversation captured Darnell's measured response. "There might have been some misunderstandings, but I never harmed that girl. She's twisting things." His careful choice of words struck Detective Reynolds as significant, not a complete denial, but an intentional downplaying of the situation. Prosecutor Martinez noted that while the recording didn't contain an explicit confession, it indicated a sense of guilt, as Harris immediately understood which misunderstandings were being referred to without Monica mentioning details. His use of "that girl" instead of "my daughter" revealed a distancing of emotions, which was typical behavior for perpetrators. The final confrontation took place in the Harris household kitchen. Armed with weeks of observations and mounting certainty, Janet confronted her husband. "You always checked on her at night," she began. "Even when she was 17. What father does that?" Darnell's response was a surge of rage followed by manipulative attempts, which shattered Janet's remaining doubts. His hand trembled as he tried to grab her arm, and his careful facade began to crack. Janet moved out that night, leaving a note that simply read, "Monica was telling the truth." She checked into the Comfort Inn on Government Street, where she wrote a detailed statement for Detective Reynolds. The document included years of observations. She had dismissed Monica's declining grades, her frequent stomach pains before church, and the fact that Darnell insisted on driving her to school, despite the bus stop being just outside their home. Linda Peterson, the church secretary who had initially recorded Darnell's claims about Monica's instability, submitted an updated statement noting his unusual and intense focus on discrediting his stepdaughter. 3 other church members also came forward with accounts of Darnell's excessive physical contact with young girls during youth group activities, behavior they had once justified as paternal. At the Mobile Rape Crisis Center, Monica broke down upon hearing about her mother's support. "I needed you to believe me," she sobbed into Janet's shoulder. "I needed you to see." The reunion, witnessed by counselor Jessica Martinez, marked a key turning point in Monica's healing process. Her violent fantasies began to fade, replaced by a determined focus on the legal proceedings. Darnell's isolation became complete. His carefully cultivated reputation began to disintegrate, and his former supporters distanced themselves. Security cameras at Wilson's Auto Repair captured him alone in the garage after hours, methodically cleaning out his toolbox. His movements mirrored those Monica had described in her accounts of the abuse. The mobile police department ramped up surveillance on Harris, noting signs of his deteriorating mental state. His bank records revealed large cash withdrawals, and his internet search history showed research on countries without extradition treaties. Detective Reynolds requested an ankle monitor, citing Darnell as a flight risk. Janet's testimony significantly strengthened the prosecution's case. Her detailed account of behavioral changes, combined with her position as both Harris's defender and accuser, provided compelling corroboration of Monica's claims. The Mobile County District Attorney's Office began preparing for trial, confident in the growing body of circumstantial evidence and character testimony. The courthouse was silent as Monica Morley took the stand. Her military poise was evident in her straight posture and pressed uniform as she faced the jury. For 6 hours, she provided testimony that court reporter Sandra Mitchell later described as the most detailed and emotionally devastating of her 20-year career. Monica's account began with the first incident. She described the Disney princess wallpaper, the creaks in the floorboards, and the smell of motor oil that always lingered on Darnell's hands. The prosecution presented her childhood diary, which contained coded references to her trauma, such as mentions of bad dreams and stomach aches. Dr. Elena Martinez, an expert witness, explained how such coded references were common among young abuse victims trying to document their experiences without risking discovery. Defense attorney Michael Richardson tried to challenge Monica's timeline, questioning why she remained silent through the high school. Monica responded, "Silence filled the courtroom. Every time I thought about telling, I remembered him saying no one would believe me, and he was right. When I finally told, no one did believe me, not at first." Janet's testimony followed. She took the stand wearing her Providence Hospital nursing badge, which she had carried for 15 years. "I failed my daughter," she began, her voice steady despite her tears. "I worked nights to provide for our family, never realizing I was leaving her vulnerable to the worst kind of predator, the one who lived in our home." Richardson's cross-examination focused on Janet's initial denial of Monica's accusations. "You didn't believe her either, did you, Mrs. Morley Harris?" he pressed. Janet's response was measured. "I believed what I wanted to believe because the truth was too horrible to face. I'm done hiding from the truth." On the 9th day of the trial, Darnell took the stand. Gone was the confident deacon. In his place stood a man whose carefully constructed persona showed clear cracks. He spoke of his sacrifices for the family, emphasizing the car he bought Monica for her 16th birthday, the same car Monica had referenced in her testimony. Darnell, with his back turned, spoke on the phone, his voice cutting through the stillness of the parking lot. "That troublemaker doesn't know what she's talking about. I gave her everything. The casual cruelty in his tone caused Janet's hand to tremble. She recognized this voice, not the warm public persona of Deacon Harris, but something colder. Meanwhile, Monica and Sergeant Carty carried out their plan. They set up a chance encounter with Darnell at Taylor's pharmacy, where Carty had hidden a recording device. The conversation that followed captured Darnell's measured response. There might have been some misunderstandings, but I never harmed that girl. She's twisting things. His carefully chosen words struck Detective Reynolds as revealing, not a total denial, but an intentional minimization of the situation. Prosecutor Martinez noted that while the recording didn't feature an explicit confession, it showed an awareness of guilt. Darnell's immediate recognition of which misunderstandings were being referred to, without Monica having to specify, suggested a guilty conscience. His use of that girl instead of my stepdaughter showed an emotional distancing, a common trait in perpetrators. The final confrontation took place in the Harris household kitchen, where Janet, armed with weeks of observations and growing certainty, faced her husband. You always checked on her at night, she began, even when she was 17. What father does that? Darnell's response was a surge of anger, followed by attempts to manipulate her, shattering Janet's remaining doubts. His hand shook as he tried to grab her arm, and his careful facade began to fall apart. That night, Janet moved out, leaving behind a note that read, Monica was telling the truth. She checked into the Comfort Inn on Government Street, where she wrote a detailed statement for Detective Reynolds. This statement included years of observations, such as dismissing Monica's declining grades, her frequent stomach pains before church, and Darnell's insistence on driving her to school, despite the bus stop being right outside their home. Linda Peterson, the church secretary who had initially documented Darnell's claims about Monica's instability, submitted a revised statement. She noted his unusually intense interest in discrediting his stepdaughter. 3 other church members came forward with accounts of Darnell's excessive physical contact with young girls during youth group activities, behavior that had previously been rationalized as paternal. At the Mobile Rape Crisis Center, Monica broke down upon learning of her mother's support. I needed you to believe me, she sobbed into Janet's shoulder. I needed you to see. The reunion, witnessed by counselor Jessica Martinez, marked a significant turning point in Monica's healing process. Her violent fantasies began to fade, replaced by a determined focus on the legal battle ahead. Darnell's isolation became complete. His well-constructed community image crumbled, and his former allies distanced themselves. Security cameras at Wilson's Auto Repair captured him alone in the garage after hours, methodically cleaning out his toolbox. His movements mirrored those Monica had described in her accounts of the abuse. The mobile police department increased surveillance on Harris, noting signs of his deteriorating mental state. His bank records revealed large cash withdrawals, and his internet search history showed research into countries with no extradition treaties. Detective Reynolds requested an ankle monitor, citing Darnell as a flight risk. Janet's testimony provided crucial support for the prosecution. Reinforcing Monica's claims, the prosecution now felt confident in their mounting body of circumstantial evidence. At the Mobile County Courthouse, silence filled the room as Monica Morley took the stand. Her military posture, evident in her straight back and pressed uniform, conveyed strength as she faced the jury. For 6 hours, she provided testimony that court reporter Sandra Mitchell later described as the most detailed and emotionally devastating of her career. Monica's testimony began with the first incident. She recalled the Disney princess wallpaper, the specific creaks in the floorboards, and the smell of motor oil that always lingered on Darnell's hands. The prosecution presented her childhood diary, where she had encoded her trauma through seemingly innocent entries about bad dreams and stomach aches. Dr. Elena Martinez, an expert witness, explained that such coded references were typical for young abuse victims trying to document their experiences without exposing themselves. Defense attorney Michael Richardson attempted to challenge Monica's timeline, questioning why she had remained silent throughout high school. Monica responded, "Silence filled the courtroom. Every time I thought about telling, I remembered him saying no one would believe me, and he was right. When I finally told, no one did believe me, not at first." Janet's testimony followed. Wearing her Providence Hospital nursing badge, which she had carried for 15 years, she began, "I failed my daughter," her voice steady despite tears. "I worked nights to provide for our family, never realizing I was leaving her vulnerable to the worst kind of predator, the one who lived in our home." Richardson's cross-examination focused on Janet's initial denial of Monica's accusations. "You didn't believe her either, did you, Mrs. Morley Harris?" he pressed. Janet responded, "I believed what I wanted to believe because the truth was too horrible to face. I'm done hiding from the truth." On the 9th day of the trial, Darnell took the stand. His usual confident demeanor was gone, replaced by a man whose carefully constructed persona had cracked. He spoke of the sacrifices he made for the family, highlighting the car he bought Monica for her 16th birthday, the same car Monica had referenced in her testimony. Monica revealed he had driven her to remote places when she threatened to expose him. Under cross-examination by prosecutor Jennifer Martinez, Darnell's composure faltered when questioned about the recorded conversation at Taylor's pharmacy. His explanation of misunderstandings became convoluted. His repeated reference to Monica as that girl, rather than his stepdaughter, drew visible reactions from several jurors. His attempt to justify a separate bank account, which he claimed was for Monica's college fund, fell apart when Martinez presented records showing no withdrawals for educational expenses. In closing, prosecutor Martinez focused on Monica's military service, telling the jury, "Before you is a soldier, someone who took an oath to defend others. Today, she's fighting a different battle, not for territory or resources, but for truth, for justice, for every child who has ever been told no one will believe you." Judge William Marshall provided detailed instructions to the jury about the standards of evidence in historical abuse cases. He emphasized that delayed reporting was common in family abuse situations and should not automatically create reasonable doubt. The testimony of several witnesses describing behavioral changes consistent with abuse could be considered circumstantial evidence. During Monica's testimony, several jurors were visibly moved, particularly when she described focusing on her princess wallpaper during the assaults, a detail so specific and haunting it seemed impossible to fabricate. Photos of the same wallpaper still hanging in her childhood room served as a chilling testament to years of hidden trauma. The jury deliberated, and in a hushed courtroom, the verdict was read, "We find the defendant Darnell Harris guilty." On multiple counts, each one a striking affirmation of justice. Monica, still in her military uniform, swayed slightly as the weight of vindication settled in. Sergeant Carty, standing by her, placed steady hands on her shoulders. Judge Marshall's sentencing statement cut through the charged atmosphere. "Mr. Harris, you used your position of trust to commit heinous crimes against a child in your care. You then weaponized your standing in this community to discredit her. This court sentences you to 25 years in the Alabama State Penitentiary, and you will serve this sentence day for day without the possibility of early release." The courtroom was silent except for Janet's quiet sobs. As Harris was led away, his confident facade shattered completely, replaced by the hollow look of a man facing decades behind bars. Together, Monica and Janet identified the subtle changes in Monica's smile over the years, how it had transformed from uninhibited joy to a practiced mask. "I should have seen it," Janet whispered. Monica's response was simple. "You see it now." Local news outlets covered their story, and the Mobile Press Register featured it, resulting in 3 new abuse cases being reported within a week. Spring Hill Baptist Church, seeking to make amends, offered their fellowship hall for victim support group meetings, the very space where Darnell had once wielded his influence. Now, it served as a sanctuary for healing. Sergeant Carty remained a steady presence in Monica's life. His protective instincts now focused on supporting her advocacy work, and his military connections helped expand their program to nearby bases to address the unique challenges of abuse in military families. Their relationship deepened, built on a foundation of shared purpose rather than shared trauma. Monica's final confrontation with Darnell occurred at the Alabama State Penitentiary. Through reinforced glass, she faced the man who had haunted her childhood. "I'm not here for closure," she stated firmly. "I'm here to tell you that your name will be remembered not as the respected deacon, but as a warning to other predators. Your shame will save others." Harris tried to manipulate her once more. speaking softly about misunderstandings and family loyalty. Monica interrupted him. Save your manipulation. You have no power anymore. Prison guard Marcus Johnson noted in his log that Harris's hand shook as Monica walked away with firm, purposeful steps. Monica's military command recognized her advocacy work by awarding her the Humanitarian Service Medal. During the ceremony, she dedicated the award to every child who has ever been told to keep a secret. Her acceptance speech, delivered in her clear soldier's voice, emphasized that true strength comes not just from surviving, but from breaking silence. The final page of the case file included a note from Detective Sarah Reynolds reflecting, "The Morley case demonstrates that justice, though delayed, can be served when survivors refuse to be silenced." Monica and Janet transformed their pain into purpose, ensuring their story would help prevent future abuse rather than remain hidden in shame. Monica's last diary entry, shared with her support group, read, "I used to dream of killing him to be free. Now I know that true freedom came not from violence, but from speaking the truth. My voice is my weapon. My story is my strength, and my legacy will be changed." Monica Morley's case became a powerful symbol of resilience, leading to lasting change in her community.